Good morning. Welcome into Let's Bet It here on Pickswise and Pickswise.com. Let's Bet It is presented by Superbook Sports. I'm Mark Zinno. He's Jared Smith here for a Wednesday edition. Make sure you subscribe to the Pickswise YouTube channel. Let us know in the comments what picks you have, what games you're on, what questions you want to know. We'll get to them all. Make sure you download the Pickswise app. It's available on the Apple Store and Google Play. A lot to get to today. We'll get to some midweek line moves in the NFL. We'll look at some conference championship games as well. A little bit of bowl game preview with our friend Tim Murray. And, of course, our plays of the day. Jared, good morning. Welcome in. Happy Wednesday.
Good morning. Good day for Aaron Judge. Bad day for John Heyman and Arson Judge. That's pretty much my thoughts.
Yeah. Hey, listen, don't tweet very, expeditiously, I guess. Be deliberate. Take your time. Get your facts right. And spell check is a wonderful thing. Or autocorrect is a really bad thing. One or the other. So,
right.
For whatever reason,
maybe we need to check into John Heyman's behind the scenes. If he's committing arson behind the scenes, he's tweeting people about arson.
Maybe he likes fire. A simple fire emoji would have done. Yeah, that's why they made it. You don't have to type arson. Just fire emoji works away. But Jared is referring to the fact that Aaron Judge this morning signs his 9-year, $360 million deal with the Yankees to stay in New York. And I fully expect that he'll end up on the injured list while signing the contract because that's exactly what happens after you sign a deal of this nature. Hard to say Aaron Judge doesn't deserve it. He absolutely does. But there's a part of me as a Yankee fan and just objectively that says, well, it's really hard to live up to this contract, the length, the value. And not only that, what we always say, the most important ability is availability. And for a guy who's often injured in his career, this is a lot of money to pay a guy who might spend as much time on the injured list as he might spend in the lineup.
It's tough. I think the Yankees were caught between a rock and a hard place because they made him the deal last year. They made him the offer that I want to say it was $30-ish million a year, somewhere in that vicinity.
7 years.
Yeah. So he turns it down and he, wins the MVP and breaks the American League home run record. So you're forced to give him more. From what I read, though, he did turn down more lucrative offers from other spots. And I do think that, to me, is a slight win for the Yankees, right? Like, they didn't have to go the full money to bring him back. He did give them a slight hometown discount. But, yes, I agree on the surface this is a deal that I think is almost impossible for any athlete, frankly, to live up to. But that's the going rate for an MVP outfielder these days in baseball. And the Yankees, I think they had to bring him back for optics, right? But yeah, it's probably going to be one of those deals that we regret in 5 years.
I mean, no one's going to say what Aaron Judge is going to be at 39 years old, right? I mean,
no idea.
He's most likely retired. That's probably my guess. If you had to make a wager on, does this deal actually come to fruition with Aaron Judge playing, let's just call it 120 games in the final year of his deal, right? Yeah, the answer is no, minus 1,000. So all that said, like you said, his season put the Yankees absolutely behind the eight ball. They had no choice but to cow to his demands and give him what he wanted. He's the face of their franchise. He's the face of Major League Baseball, and he's a marketing machine. So that alone theoretically should pay for a lot of this deal, right?
I agree.
Alone with my kids want Aaron Judge jerseys. They want Aaron Judge baseball cards. They want Aaron Judge. I mean, it just
he has his own section in the stadium for crying out loud.
Exactly. So, and every single one of those gavels and white beards that they sell goes right to help pay Aaron's contract. So, and every one of the advertisers who puts them in a commercial on the YES Network helps to pay for that contract. So, all that said, no one should cry for the Yankees as far as the amount of money that they spend.
No.
But the real question is, does any of this translate to a championship for a team that has now gone to carry the two?
15 years
now without a championship, 2009. So they're working on year 14. It better work out in that sense. So there is that. As well, Jared, we have some other news to get to outside of Aaron Judge, and my hamster just fell off the wheel. What were we talking about pre-show that we needed to address here?
Baker Mayfield, our favorite.
Baker Mayfield. He became so irrelevant to me when I got caught in the Aaron Judge conversation. Baker Mayfield signed by the Rams. By accounts, they expect him to start tomorrow night. They expect him to play.
That's wild. That's wild.
I mean,
I don't have many thoughts here besides Yeah, I just didn't think he was a good fit for the Niners. Like everyone was like, oh, he's going back to the Niners, going back to the Niners. Like I didn't buy that. Like I really thought what we saw on Sunday from Brock Purdy was exactly what the Niners needed, which is a guy who really knows the system. Like to me, that's the Niners offense is more about system than talent. Like especially at the quarterback position, because let's be honest, before the season, we were ready to send Jimmy G off to the glue factory, and then he starts playing, and because of his knowledge of the system and the talent around him, it looked great. I'm not saying Brock Purdy's going to be Jimmy G, but I just think that mattered more than bringing in a guy that's a head case that has to learn a brand new system that clearly is going to be more of a distraction to your Super Bowl run. In LA, it's the perfect fit. I mean, literally, that is the perfect landing spot for him. There's talent around him. Clearly, there's expectations, offensive-minded head coach, but there's no pressure to perform. The Rams season's over. He can kind of ease into the game a little bit without the expectations of having to make a Super Bowl run on his mind. I think it's a really good spot for him. Obviously, the waiver order, too, made it really hard for him to get all the way to San Francisco because the waiver wire is structured based off of who has the worst record in the league. So the Niners were, one of the last 10 or so teams that were making waiver claims. So it didn't make sense when everyone on my timeline was like, oh, he's going to the Niners. I didn't buy that. This makes a whole lot more sense. And listen, I wish him the best. He's a guy that's clearly troubled between the ears right now. And we'll see if Sean McVay can, help whisper him back to mental health. But I think this is a really good landing spot for him. I'm shocked to see him play so fast, but the Rams don't really have a whole lot else in the pasture right now. So we'll see how it looks, but should be fun. That's for sure. Right? Don't we get Russell Wilson and Baker Mayfield on Christmas Day now? Rams, Broncos. That should be fun.
Yeah. Hashtag I don't feel like watching football on Christmas at all that day. Thank God the NBA.
Might actually watch the NBA that day.
You swung and you missed. Not your fault that everybody else stinks except for the Dolphins who's playing that day. Not your fault, but you swung. That said, you could argue that Sean McVay might be the best offensive coach that Baker Mayfield has had in his entire career. So there is that. All right, let's take a look at some midweek line moves in the NFL. Pittsburgh and Baltimore opened up as a pick'em, and quickly the public jumped on Kenny Pickett or at least some of the sharps did as well. Kenny Pickett and the Pittsburgh Steelers, who are now a 2.5-point favorite in a matchup of quarterbacks that we thought we'd see in the beginning of the year. Of course, Kenny Pickett versus Tyler Huntley. So, look, these games between Baltimore and Pittsburgh have historically been a field goal game or less, one way or another. It is telling that they opened it up at a pick. And believe it or not, the Ravens have won with Tyler Huntley before, so it wouldn't shock me if they were able to do it again, especially with a full week of practice.
Yeah, I mean, we saw this exact game last year. I mean, it was Huntley against the Steelers, and it was a very close game. 20-19 was the final. So I don't see why we can't get a similar scoreline in this game. Again, when you look at this Ravens team, besides the offense, the rest of the team's playing great. I mean, they've got the best kicker on the planet, so you're not really worried about them missing a late field goal. And they've got a defense that, since trading for Roquan Smith in Week 9, third in EPA per play, second in rushing success rate. They're not giving up a whole lot on the ground. And you would imagine that's what the Steelers want to do. They have a rookie quarterback. He's never played in this rivalry before. Kenny Pickett's been good since the bye. It's kind of been this evolution. He started in Week 5. His first start was Week 5 against the Bills. Didn't play. They got their butts whipped in that game. We know that final score turned out. And then kind of sputtered his way into the bye week in Week 9. Since Week 9, the Steelers are 3-1, and their only loss was to the Bengals, a game that they had the lead in at halftime and gave up 37 points. So certainly not Pickett's fault. They scored 30 in that game against the Bengals defense that has been pretty good. And their offense has, dramatic uptick in efficiency. They go from 28th in EPA per play from weeks 5 through 8, which is when Pickett first started. Now they're in the top 10. Defense also in the top 10. So I think both teams are playing really good on the defensive side of the ball. Obviously, the Steelers more efficient with Pickett right now offensively. We'll see what we get with Huntley. Again, he's been down this road before. He started a handful of games last year, only won one of them. But I think the market moved a little too much here because this look-ahead line was about 4, 5-ish, and now it's 3. That's telling me a 7.5-point move from Huntley. From Jackson to Huntley, I think that's a little too much. I think 6.5, 7's probably fair. So at 3, I bet the Ravens, and I'm assuming it's probably not going to get back to 3 this week. My guess is it stays around 2.5, but I will be writing up Ravens for the site. It'll probably go live a little bit later tonight.
Well, and Huntley should at least have some familiarity with tough defenses after being thrown in there against the Broncos last week. Some more movements in the AFC North, the other divisional matchup there. Cincinnati Bengals opened up as a 4-point favorite on the road at Cleveland. It has been quickly shot up to 6. The short answer here for me, Jared, is the Bengals are as hot as you could absolutely imagine. Road win against the Steelers, road win against the Titans, home wins against the Chiefs. However, part of me feels like Cleveland is the right side this week.
Well, the numbers say that Joe Burrow is undefeated against the Kansas City Chiefs, 3-0, and totally defeated, 0-4, against the Cleveland Browns in his career. And when they faced the Browns earlier this season on Monday night, primetime game, everyone's watching, Burrow had his lowest QBR of the season, sub 20, like by a mile, his lowest QBR of the season. Now, I know that game had some unique circumstances. I don't think Joe Mixon played in it. We'll see what we get from Mixon and Chase this week. I'm assuming Chase, he looked fine last week, but a week healthier. This is the spot for the Bengals to flex their muscle, but Joe Burrow's had this thing against the Browns that we just really can't quantify or make sense of. I know the first 2 games were when the Bengals were bad, right? It was Burrow's first year. Last year, I can't explain it. Can't explain the loss last year. They got blown out. Can't explain the loss this year. Got blown out. This is a Bengals team last year that went to the Super Bowl, and this year they're on that pace, and they just cannot get over the hump against this Browns team. So if you're laying it with Cincinnati, keep in mind that you're going against the Joe Burrow, Bengals, Browns curse. Maybe this is the week that he exercises the demons, but I do think there are better spots on the board than laying it with Cincinnati this week for sure.
Yeah, again, very, very divisional dogs this year have been covering at a 62% clip. So just keep that in mind. One final game, the Seattle Seahawks opened up as 6.5-point favorites against the Carolina Panthers and break up the Carolina Panthers. Been down to 3.5 now. Seattle is favored. And mostly, I don't think it's Sam Darnold here, Jared. It's that Carolina defense that has been very, very good as of late.
Yeah, I'll be honest. This move is very intriguing to me. Seattle, I know it was the Rams, but it's a divisional game. There was a lot of starch in that rivalry. Bobby Wagner and Jalen Ramsey are barking all game at DK Metcalf. And what does Geno do? He goes down the field on the last drive of the game against a good defense, and he sticks one in the end zone, and the Seahawks win the game. I don't know why this has moved so significantly. It could be the Panthers defense. It could be something else we don't know that we're not quantifying at this point. Pretty significant move to go from 6.5 to 3.5. Maybe it's just a lot of upside with Carolina and their defense. I think Seattle's defense is really the unit that's fallen back to earth over the last few weeks. They had a really good run there weeks 5 through 10, somewhere in that range. They were playing like a top 10 defense, but I think they've come back down to earth. And you saw how inefficient they were against John Wolford and the Rams on Sunday, giving up a late touchdown and falling behind. And they needed that heroic drive from Geno to kind of bring them back in the game and win it. But man, I really want Seattle to make the playoffs because I think Geno it's a great story and what they've been able to accomplish this year. But Kenneth Walker's banged up, and the defense isn't playing well, and the line movement's telling you Carolina's the right side. So I'll probably stay away here. But if you want to bet Seattle, you're definitely getting an opportunity to buy low because this line has moved significantly over the last 48 hours or so.
Well, I can tell you Seattle's going to make the playoffs because when Washington defeats the Giants next week on Sunday Night Football, that's exactly what's going to happen. So
sure.
I can save you the suspense. There is that. All right, let's get on to odds to win each of the NFL conferences here. Starting with the AFC, Bills are the favorites still at plus 170, Chiefs in second, plus 225. Bengals at 6-1, Ravens at 9-1, Dolphins plus 1250, a little bit higher than I would have expected. I still think the Bills would get my money, but you can't disrespect the Cincinnati Bengals at this point in time after the last 3 weeks.
Yeah, I pulled a pretty nifty maneuver this week. I was able to get a live number on the Bengals to win the Super Bowl about midway through the Chiefs game when they were, on the front foot playing well. I got 16-1 there. So I think if you extrapolate that to 6-1 to win the AFC, there's a little value there. The issue that I have is they really need to win that division, and they need to get at least one home game in the playoffs. I think it's going to be really tough for them to go on the road 3 straight weeks and make it back to the Super Bowl. I think winning that division, because if they do win the division, if they can sneak into the 2 seed and their only road game, because they have the tiebreaker over Kansas City, obviously, head-to-head. And if their only road game in the AFC playoffs is at Buffalo in the AFC Championship game, theoretically, then I think 6-1 is a very fair number because, again, look at that gap between Kansas City and Cincinnati. If we think Cincinnati, which, let's be honest, they faced the Chiefs 3 times, they've beaten them 3 times. If we think Cincinnati is a tough matchup for the Chiefs, then that gap needs to be tighter, and you're probably getting some value on the Bengals because you would think that number will shrink if Cincinnati can get over the hump, win the AFC North. If the Ravens fall off a little bit without Lamar Jackson, that number, that gap will tighten significantly, and you'll put the Bengals on that top tier, whereas right now they're clearly on the second tier kind of by themselves. So I do feel like Cincinnati still has a hair of value in the futures market, but if they win this week and if the Ravens lose to the Steelers and all of a sudden Cincinnati's the favorite to win the AFC North, that's when I think the value will be fully extracted from this market. So this might be the last week you can get the Bengals on that second tier in the futures market.
Over to the NFC, Eagles clearly the favorite there at plus 150. Cowboys in second at 290. There's 5-1. Vikings 7-1. Buccaneers plus 850. Yeah, no. I will say this much. I mean, you can't really hate on the Vikings. Eventually they're going to lose a close game. I don't know when it is, but maybe it makes them battle tested for the playoffs. If you're feeling Brock Purdy-ish, go with the 49ers. But the Cowboys, to me, if somehow the Giants pull off an upset this week and beat the Eagles and the Cowboys have a chance to face them head-to-head to take the division lead, yeah. Right now, the Cowboys might be the best value you're going to get for them.
Yeah, I think this is a much tight – like the NFC all year has just been a complete crapshoot. I would not look at anybody past Minnesota or Tampa Bay. Like Minnesota and Tampa Bay are reaches. And if you want to stick to the adage defense wins championships, then the Vikings are just get them off the screen right now. I mean, they're a bottom 10. They have the lowest DVOA of any 10-2 team since 1981. And that's as far back as the records go. Like, they're the worst defensive team to be 10-2 in arguably the history of the NFL. So I don't see them making a playoff run. I see them getting their butts kicked this week, first of all, against the Lions. We'll see how that game turns out. But my guess is at some point the other shoe will drop with Minnesota. The top of the market's been, it's been impressive all year. Listen, Dallas right now is blowing teams out. Philly is blowing teams out. They're arguably the 2 best teams in the NFC. Obviously, San Francisco with Jimmy Garoppolo out is not going to be a team that you think you can take seriously for a postseason run. I hate to say it, but can we just put Philly and Dallas in the NFC Championship game right now and see how that one plays out? They played earlier this year, but it was Cooper Rush, right? So it's really tough to gauge that game. They'll play again, I think, in a couple weeks, and that'll be the game right there. Can Dallas make up enough ground elsewhere to get even with them in the division standings? I know our next guest, Tim Murray, does not want that to happen because he's got a big future on the Eagles, but we'll get to that in a minute. But yeah, I think those top 2 teams are really the only 2 teams I think that have the balance right now to make a postseason run.
You heard Jared mention it. Our next guest, a good friend of the show. You can catch him on VSiN every single day. Although he's from the district, he's out in the land of the desert. Tim Murray joins us here on Let's Bet It this morning. Tim, good morning. Welcome. Always great to have you with us here as we get set for college football bowl season. Now, typically as an Army guy, I would ask you about Army-Navy first because it's coming up this weekend. Yeah. But I know better.
Wow.
Put that down. Okay, you know what? Since you did that,
oh wow, you pulled no punches here. Oh man, now I feel like the idiot. Now I feel like the civvy over here. I'm the civvy.
All right.
See, here's the funny thing, though, about this is that Zimmo's actually a brave human, right? Like, served for our country. I just sat in a studio and got to talk about Navy football for 3 years. So I got
Mark
here.
Lived it.
Zimmo served this
country.
Next to Annapolis.
Colonel Zimmo.
I'm sitting here pretending like, I'm some brave soul, like, yeah, Navy. I'm, part of the Marines. No, I just sat there and talked about Navy football for 3
that's
years.
great.
Oh,
That's
see,
great.
I was going to ask you about Notre Dame because, that's a game I already the team you do like. I already circled that game when it came out. I already have a bet locked in, and it's not even on Notre Dame or South Carolina. It is on the over. That is an incredibly low total that opened at 50.5. Locked it in at 51. As soon as I saw it move a point, I said, I'm not waiting any longer. Locked it in at 51.5. Notre Dame's offense, you can't hate on it right now. And South Carolina's defense is not good, but you'll get the best of Spencer Rattler, who's been playing really well as of late. I expect a ton of points to be scored in this game. I'm not sure who covers the side, but I know this total is going over.
Yeah, it's a fascinating bowl game, December 30th, Jacksonville. I do think you're going to get a pretty motivated Notre Dame team. That's the biggest thing, guys, and I'm sure you'll talk about it over the next couple of weeks. It's, who's going to be motivated? Look, Notre Dame has had opt-outs. I guess officially it hasn't happened yet. I would be very surprised if Michael Mayer and or Isaiah Foskey, their edge rusher, played in this bowl game, and I wouldn't begrudge them for it. They're both potential first-round picks. I do expect Notre Dame's strongest unit, which is their offensive line, to be fully intact. Every single person who started all year will be on that offensive line, including Jarrett Patterson. So that is big for the Irish. Their 3 running backs will be playing in this game: Audric Estime, Logan Diggs, and Chris Tyree, which is also huge. Who's playing quarterback? I don't know. Steve Angeli is a true freshman. Obviously, Drew Pine has hit the transfer portal. He stepped in for Tyler Buckner. That's the biggest question, guys, is Tyler Buckner, who won the starting quarterback job, played against Ohio State, got hurt against Marshall. Marcus Freeman told me, the media, on Sunday night that he's been practicing and that he's full go. I'll believe it when I see it. I mean, he broke his collarbone, had surgery. I would be very surprised if he's full go. Now, could there be packages for him? That's another question here. So, as for the way you're looking at this game, Zeno, whether to go over, I can't disagree with the way that South Carolina's offense has been playing. I mean, Spencer Rattler, the last 2 weeks, specifically 3 weeks ago against Tennessee, I mean, he was unbelievable. So this is a pass offense that is exciting. Shane Beamer is here in Las Vegas, and I think he's been telling people that he expects Spencer Rattler to play, and then who knows after that if he's going to come back for another year, if he's going to go to pro, who knows. But, you always wonder about the opt-out situation. Spencer Rattler 2 years ago was expected to be the number 1 overall pick, and now he's kind of vying for, is he going to be drafted? But I think this is a fascinating matchup. I actually think there's a bunch of games that are really intriguing, and this is one of them because, Shane Beamer, we had, Matt Fortuna on our show from The Athletic yesterday. And, think about it this way, guys. This is year 2 of Shane Beamer, and this is a great point that Matt pointed out. He has the opportunity to end with wins over Tennessee, Clemson, and Notre Dame to end the year. Not a bad way to potentially end year number 2. South Carolina is only a 4-hour drive from Jacksonville, Columbia, that is. So there's going to be plenty of Gamecock fans there. So I think you're going to get a pretty motivated team. And I certainly don't disagree with your angle, Mark, that this could be an over game. I think when it comes to the side, I would lean towards the dog. But I do wonder if South Carolina, as you mentioned, Zeno, struggling to stop anybody. If Notre Dame wants to run the ball like they did against Clemson, I think that's what we're going to see. So I don't know how much the quarterback position, because think back to the Notre Dame Clemson game, right? Drew Pine threw for like 90 yards. They wanted to run the ball. They were able to run the ball. They controlled that game that way. So I think that is probably going to be the game plan here for Notre Dame. They got 3 really good running backs. They've got a great offensive line, and they're going to want to lean on that. And that's the way they're going to win this game if they do so down in Jacksonville on December 30th.
Yeah, that'll be a fun one for sure. I know you'll have your Irish gear donned and ready to go. Another interesting one. This is kind of the kickoff of bowl season, sort of, right? That first Saturday, the Jimmy Kimmel LA Bowl. Gotta love the names. Wazoo, Fresno State. Really good quarterback matchup here,
Yeah.
Tim. You got our buddy Cam Ward, and of course your BFF, Jake Haener, gets you across the finish line with that Fresno Mountain West championship bet over the weekend. Little line movement here towards Fresno, little line movement here towards the under. Currently Fresno minus 254.5. I don't know. I think Wazoo, Cam Ward. I mean, I know Haener is all the rage, but Pac-12 team is an underdog against the Mountain West team, and I could certainly say the quarterback situation at Washington State's pretty solid. But again, you mentioned that tricky transfer portal. 1 out of every 10 college football players right now is in the transfer portal. So I think that's the most important part of any handicap I make during this bowl season. Who's in, who's out, and who's motivated. I think the motivation here probably a little even on both sides. What do you think?
Yeah, I think Washington State, you're looking at a team that, was a transitional period last year with the whole Rolovich, firing. But this has been first year of their head coach. You mentioned Cam Ward. They exceeded expectations, went over their win total. So once again, I think motivation, probably relatively even. It's not a weird location, right? Both of these teams are happy to be in Los Angeles at SoFi Stadium. What's wrong with that, right? I do look back a little to last year, though, where I thought Oregon State would be pretty motivated, and Utah State walked in there and smoked them. And this is one of the few games, guys, where the bowl ties are a mid-major against, or a group of 5, I should say, against the power conference. So, obviously that adds maybe a little extra motivation. Jake Haener started his career at Washington, is wrapping up his career here with Fresno State. Last year, the bowl game was kind of bizarre because he had initially hit the portal, then he pulled out, and it was just kind of a weird circumstance for Fresno State. Now he's locked in, right? He won the championship up there at Boise, which made me very happy. I would lean towards Fresno State, lean towards the early line movement here. Okay. I do think this is one of my favorite bowl games of the season, because I do think motivation is there. I think offensive firepower is kind of what we want to see, outside of Iowa and Kentucky, which has a lower total than Army Navy, which is amazing. I think that, I would look towards Jake Haener kind of trying to put a bow on his career here with a victory. And that's why I think you've seen the early line movement in favor of Fresno State. So lean towards a Fresno here. I'll be honest, guys. This is kind of a talking out type of period for me with all of these bowl games. There are some people that I know that have fired on bowl games. There's a couple that I could see myself firing on now. Obviously, the college football playoff is a different circumstance, but I'm just kind of waiting because the portal it's still open, right? Guys could still be weighing their options of whether to not go in. You hear different rumors, and then players are dispelling them, like Braylon Allen at Wisconsin. People said he's going in the portal. He said, I'm not going in the portal. So it's a tricky time, but I do think there is some options and opportunity out there for some motivation. And, a bowl game maybe we'll hit on a little bit and a little later is, Michael Penix from Washington. He said he's coming back. I think that rallies the troops a little bit there. Even though there might be disappointment that Washington, was this close to going to the Rose Bowl and instead they're going to the Alamo Bowl, I still think they're pretty excited to play with their quarterback for another
year.
Especially
first year under a new coach too, right? First bowl game for this new regime. I think that makes sense.
Let's go to the tastiest bowl of all there, Tim, on January 2nd, the Cheez-It Bowl. I mean, why not? Because they are delicious, they are crunchy, they are cheesy. LSU and Purdue. Interesting here, matchup between these two teams. We saw LSU and Jalen Daniels limping off the field in the SEC championship game. I'm sure, by all accounts, we assume he's going to be okay for the game should he decide to play in it. But, I think you look at interesting circumstances here. Brian Kelly obviously has a lot of motivation to want to win this game, get to a 10-win season in his first year. Certainly put a stamp on the fact that you beat Alabama and, you're somebody to be contended with in the SEC West. And the same thing for Purdue, after getting smoked in their championship game. Jeff Brom has always been a great underdog coach, always has been, and he always gets his team up for these games. Defensively, they lag a little bit, but certainly offensively, they can put up points. So how do you handicap this one?
Is Jeff Brom going to be the head coach of Purdue for this game? That's my question. Louisville is open. Yeah, he is a Louisville legend.
That would be interesting.
Clamored for him for years, and they didn't get him last time around, and he went and stayed, and Scott Satterfield came from Appalachian State. There's a lot of smoke that he could be leaving and going to Louisville. That's not something I'm reporting. It's just putting it out there. What is the possibility? He hasn't said no yet. So that's something to keep on your radar here. I think LSU, to your point, Mark, I do think you get a motivated LSU team. As crazy as it sounds, I think they want to win this game. And you look at some of the lesser bowl games that Brian Kelly coached at Notre Dame, he won them all outside of, I think, the Champ Sports Bowl against Florida State. He won the Sun Bowl in his first year at Notre Dame.
Yeah.
They won the Citrus Bowl against LSU. They won the Music City Bowl against LSU. They won the Camping World Bowl, absolutely hammered Iowa State. So Brian Kelly actually does a pretty good job, especially in these lower level bowls, kind of keeping the team's eyes on the prize here. And I think another big announcement yesterday that I was not anticipating, Kayshon Boutte is coming back, which is very surprising to me. So I think that is kind of an eye-opener, like, whoa, maybe, these guys are buying in. They got to go to the SEC championship. I know they came up short. So, I just think on the surface, LSU is a far superior team. And, you're starting to see some market movement a little bit towards LSU. Circa, where I work each and every night, is up at 9 right now, which is kind of an indicator of where maybe that smarter money is coming in. So, yeah, I'm not a big proponent of laying points. And as you mentioned, Mark, I know Jeff Brom historically has been really, really good as an underdog and against some top-tier teams. I'm just curious if he's going to be the head coach. I mean, maybe this is just a small bet just to see, hey, does Jeff Brom coach this game? Is he at Louisville? Does he stay at Purdue? So, Purdue exceeded expectations, got to the Big Ten championship. Was that their Super Bowl? I'm asking, they got to go to the Big Ten championship, and now you go to the Citrus Bowl month removed. So I think LSU, I expect them to be motivated. I don't know if Jaden Daniels is going to play in this game. So that'll be the interesting one.
That's huge.
Tim, does it matter if he accepts the Louisville job but still coaches the game, in your opinion?
It's a good question.
Because there are plenty of coaches who do that. Right? There are plenty of coaches who take that job saying,
would. The most amazing thing ever, though, is that the Cincinnati-Louisville game is taking place in less than 2 weeks at Fenway Park, and Scott Satterfield went from Louisville to Cincinnati, and he is now tied into that. So the little storylines out there in some of these bowl games,
coaching both teams,
why not? They're going to be on both sidelines, so why not? Just let them out there, have a little fun. Let's have a little fun with it.
Yeah, that's such a big part of this, Tim, and we're going to rename you Motivational Murray for the next 3 weeks, because I need you to sniff out these little, because to me and the analytics matter very little and the numbers matter very little at this stage. Who plays, who wants to play, who wants to be there, what the vibe is of the game, what the feeling is heading into the game. Like, all of those little intangibles at this point in the season, in my opinion, matter significantly more than any data point that I can give you from what happened 6 weeks ago with guys who may or may not even be playing in these games. So I think it's, as we go further along, it's harder to predict out the later games, like the game, LSU January 2nd. Like, it's just really hard to tell me what's going to, I don't even know what I'm having for lunch tomorrow. How do I know what's going to take place on January 2nd in college football? So very difficult to project out these games. That being said, a game that's kind of in the middle range of the schedule, it's the Armed Forces Bowl. And let's be honest, anytime a service academy team is playing in the Armed Forces Bowl, it's really hard to look in any other direction, right? This came off the 7 from Baylor. Now we're sitting 6.5 with Air Force, and it's a home game for Baylor, right? It's Fort Worth to Waco. It's about an hour's drive, so that's certainly part of the equation. But you would imagine Air Force is going to be really up for this game, as the service academies tend to be in their Armed Forces Bowl namesake. So it's all about the handicap, and can Baylor's defense shut that? I like Dave Aranda a lot. I'm assuming his defense will be live against this option offense, but this is an Air Force offense that's a little different than previous Air Force offenses, right?
Yeah, and there's a reason, Jared, that this has moved off the 7, right? I mean, money coming in on Air Force and Armed Forces in bowl games, as Mark, you can allude to or attest to, they're going to be motivated. They're always motivated, right? They're always going to give it their best opportunity. And Baylor, look, last year they were in the Sugar Bowl, and now here they are in the Armed Forces Bowl pre-Christmas. I do love Dave Aranda. I think he's a tremendous coach. Maybe they exceeded expectations last year. It's certainly possible. But yeah, if I'm catching points with an Armed Force, academy here, I'm going to take them. Yeah. And I wish I could have got 7. I don't think we're getting back there. I would imagine this is going to be only going one way. The Armed Forces Bowl it's interesting, the history that has happened. This game at Fort Worth, as you mentioned, we've seen Navy play there. I played Louisiana Tech, a broadcast that I was a part of. That was a great game, 48-45. We saw Army have one of the more historic performances ever. I think they had 10 possessions and 10 touchdowns against Houston. So
that's right.
Look, you go to a bowl game and you're kind of there like, all right, wrap up the season. And now you're going to have this team coming at you for 60 minutes and blocking you and just nonstop. It's not fun. Last year, Army won this game on a last-second field goal. But remember, they were a favorite against Missouri. So they actually didn't cover that number. I'm catching points with an Armed Forces Academy. I just feel like, not to simplify it too much, but it's really something you need to look at when it comes to, a service academy in a bowl game, knowing their motivation. And not to say that Baylor won't be motivated, and this is in the state of Texas, as you alluded to, but yeah, certainly it would be take the points or pass here. And Air Force is worth a hard look. And, at 6.5, it's definitely worth a long look to see if the Falcons are a side to take here against Baylor.
I like it. All right, Tim, I will don my Army cap once again as you and I will go head to head here in the Army-Navy matchup.
Switzerland here, neutral
installment of it. Look, I'll say this much as I wear my Army cap proudly, and I will root the Black Knights on and hope they sing second. That said, I have a hard time betting on the Black Knights in this game, mostly because their run defense is a major liability. One of the bottom run defenses in the nation, giving up nearly 200 yards a game on the ground. The Navy run defense, it's top 5 in the country, only giving up 93 yards per game. I know these teams know the triple option well, and I know they know how to defend it well. That said, I still don't like the fact that Army has been so susceptible to be beaten on the ground, because at the end of the day, when it comes to stopping the run, a lot of it is more about athleticism than scheme. It's more about how you do it up front. Now, granted, they'll be facing like-sized athletes when it comes to the Service Academy, but all that said in total, I think Army's only hope in this game, and Jeff Monken has not been afraid to do this, is throw the ball. Army quarterback Tyler has thrown for 300 yards this year on just 16 passes. He's completed 50% of them. And for a Service Academy, that's a whopping number. I expect that Army will throw early and try to loosen up the Navy's defense and try to keep them on their toes and hope that they can find some early running lanes. Because if they don't and they get down, despite the fact that Army is a higher scoring offense, again, I don't think that either team gets a 20 in this game, and I probably lean on Navy here to cover.
Well, and that's where you only see the unique aspects of this rivalry, because as you mentioned, Mark, and I think that's a really important thing that you mentioned. These are like-styled athletes, right? So you might see a couple wrinkles. I remember a couple years ago, Navy had an injury to their quarterback, and they brought out Malcolm Perry. This is before Malcolm Perry, kind of took off as one of the better quarterbacks in school history. They were running the read option from the shotgun for a lot of the game. But they are able to do that because it's not them going up against a team that is superior in size. But I think the biggest thing to me and why I bet Navy in this spot, and I'll be honest, don't lay points because these games get weird. It could be a 1-point game. I do love the fact that, as you mentioned, Mark, this is a Navy defense that is the real deal stopping the run. And you saw it against big boys, right? Notre Dame, UCF down the stretch. I really liked – look, earlier in the year, Mark, I couldn't have been taking Navy. But the way this team finished the year, playing Notre Dame as tough as they did, and really if that game goes 5 more minutes, I think they beat Notre Dame. Then they beat UCF. Now they've taken off the 3 weeks here to prepare for Army. The quarterback position, Ty Lavatai, I thought was really kind of getting into his own. He gets injured. It'll be Xavier Arline, who's a kind of a dual threat type of guy, who was a lacrosse player. I think he still might be a lacrosse player. But I just think the biggest thing for me is the defense for Navy in this spot. And the market's kind of telling you that, right? Army opened a favorite, is now moved to Navy as a slight favorite. You might be able to middle this sucker some point or another. If it gets up to 3, I don't know if we'll get there. But I do think Navy, just the way they're playing, Mark, and I think at the end of the day, Army's schedule, I have a lot of questions because of who they've played. Now, they played Troy tough. They played UTSA tough. Both those teams are top 25 teams now. But you look at the American Athletic Conference week in and week out, the best wins Army has, right? It's UMass, it's UConn, it's a couple FCS teams. So I don't really know what Army is. I feel like I have a better read on what Navy is. So I'm going to roll with the mids here to sing second. I know that pains you. And we'll see. The biggest question is, guys, will this be the 17th consecutive year we go under in an Army-Navy game?
That's really the only thing I care about in this game, frankly. To me, that's the most intriguing part of the game.
Yep. I mean, have you guys seen the numbers since 2005, between the 53 matchups between all three service academies? The under is hit at 43-9-1. That's 82.6%. Why would you take an over?
At some point, there has to be an over, right? Like, it has to happen. It's like a crap roll, and it's going to end eventually. You're going to crap out. It's going to happen, right? But maybe we'll be old and gray.
If this game goes, let's say 10-7 or whatever, and I could just envision somebody sitting on their couch like Krusty the Clown when he bet the Washington Generals saying, but they were due, you know?
Yeah,
so
they were due.
We'll see if the over
He's dribbling it between his legs.
Remember last year's game, guys, they had 17 points in the first half and scored 6 in the second. And it still stayed under. So, I mean, it is what it is, you know? I mean, it's just and weather won't be a factor, really. It might be a little bit windy, but they don't expect rain in the forecast or anything, so you should have fairly clean conditions. Plus, if there's a prop to miss a field goal, bet it. One of these two guys is going to choke and shank one. It's going to happen. It's absolutely going to happen. Yeah. And take a safety as well, because when the punters, who are the best athletes on the field, are pinning these guys inside the 5, someone's getting sacked in the backfield for a safety. So have fun with the props. But Tim Murray is always –
I'd love to see more props in this game. I don't know which books. At least out here, I know Tim can speak to this. The prop market's pretty – it's like the desert. It's pretty dry and barren out here. So I doubt we'll see those props out here.
We've talked about this before. If this stays at 1.5 on Saturday, okay, we're not supposed to tease college. When it comes to service academies, laying 7.5 is
I agree.
Stupid.
I agree with teasing.
On Sunday and tease it with somebody.
I don't mind that.
I will not, Mark. I subscribe fully to the never tease college football theory, but
it's a numbers
Army-Navy
thing
with a total of 32.5. That's lower than any total in the NFL. You're playing
100%.
Totals, right?
It's a straight numbers thing. The points are worth more.
Yeah,
absolutely,
100%.
Well, I'm glad I got the cosign. I hope that you lose. I hope that Army sings second. Go Army, beat Navy. We love you, Tim Murray of Easton. Yeah, listen, I'll text you for a little side wager on the game for a goof.
Let's do it.
All right, let's do it.
See you guys. Good luck, guys. Thanks, Timbo. Appreciate you, bud. Love you.
Oh, man. I get them. It's literally, Jared, the only college football game I care. I watch this sport religiously for 15
I like that it's a standalone game. And I'll be honest, like I talked about this with Lauren yesterday. For me, it's more of an entertainment value than a betting value game. Like, obviously, if there's betting value to be had, I'm not going to not bet the game. But it's one of those games that I don't feel that FOMO if I don't bet it. I just like watching it. I've always wanted to attend one. I haven't yet. It's arguably on the top 5 Mount Rushmore of my sporting events that I like to watch every year. I mean, it's a fantastic spectacle, and the pageantry, and I love the tradition. I mean, it's just in a sport that is losing a lot of the tradition and the culture. For example, I know it didn't work out this way, but if it would have, Ohio State turned down the Rose Bowl because of money and ticket sales. Like, they basically told the Rose Bowl, we're good, take Penn State. If we're not in the playoff, we'd rather go somewhere else. Like, that is the example of the culture of college football completely changing. You are turning down the granddaddy of them all. Like, this game will never feel that outside, energy of, money and status and transfer portal and all this other crap we talk about. That's why this game is just, it's top notch, man. It really is.
Yeah, again, aesthetically not so pleasing, but 100% worth
the
time to go and do it. When it was at M&T Bank Stadium in Baltimore, it was back in 2012. Got to be on the field pregame and walk around. I was in uniform, granted, too. Well, it was awesome. It was definitely an amazing experience, to say the least. All right. Also an amazing experience is Let's Bet It, presented by Superbook Sports. You can pile up the wins, pile up the money with Superbook Right now, the best betting app from Las Vegas is giving you free money every week you make a bet. Just place a $50 bet each week with Superbook. They'll give you a $5 bonus up to $50 for each betting week afterwards. So if you're in Arizona, Colorado, Iowa, Nevada, New Jersey, or Tennessee, download that Superbook Sports app or visit superbook.com to get your streak started today. Speaking of streaks, we'll try to stay hot with our plays of the day. But first, Jared, take us to the Pickswise.com website. Let the populace know what we have.
Yeah, there's a lot tonight. 3 hockey games. Mark Lammy, Christopher Moraes, Trevor Mack chiming in on some NHL. Hermantis Nida chiming in on the NBA. And I will let you fine folk go sift through for yourself and tell me what you like, because there's a bunch on the card today. So go ahead. Have fun.
All right. Well, with that, it'll bring us to the moment where we put our lives, reputations, respect, and business acumen on the line. Well, all that and money. On our plays of the day. Jared, get us started.
Yeah, so UConn at Florida tonight. Huskies are off to their best start in 9 years, 9-0. So what are we going to do? We're going to fade them, baby. We're taking Florida plus 4.5 here. It's the first true road game for the Huskies this year. And listen, they've been great. They're a top 10 team, offensive, defensive efficiency. Dan Hurley's done a fantastic job, but I think the offensive efficiency number is a little fraudulent. This is a team that is shooting it well above what the expectation was. And again, their first true road game, hostile environment in Gainesville. Todd Golden's team, first year from San Francisco, they've been okay. Lost to FAU, that's nothing to sneeze over, right? That's not a loss you want on your resume. But their other losses to Xavier and West Virginia on neutral, not going to fault them there. The matchup to watch tonight, Colin Castleton, the big for Florida, against Adama Sanogo, who right now is kind of a top 5 national player of the year rating based off of his early start to the season. That's going to be a really fun matchup. Can Castleton get Sanogo into foul trouble? Can Florida score on the interior against this very good UConn defense? Obviously, whoever makes more threes is probably going to be in for a good game, but I'll lean a little bit more to the Gators there because I think naturally they're a better shooting team. And even though the numbers haven't said so this year, I think UConn eventually will come back to earth offensively because nobody expected them to be a top 10 offensive team in this particular with their roster setup. They are much more of a defensive-minded team. And, of course, that's going to be difficult to score on. But I'll take the 4.5 at home with the Gators, and I will hope for some regression here with the Huskies as they're off to their best start again in nearly a decade. So we'll take Florida plus 4.5. Home dog tonight against the dog, the Huskies, down there in Gainesville.
All right, for my play of the day, it is back. For the first time since the early part of 2022, we have the return of Zeno's period. We will head to the ice.
Oh, boy.
First period over between the Capitals and Flyers in Philadelphia. Now, I know both of these teams aren't exactly high-scoring, nor have they gotten off to hot starts per se. However, the Philadelphia Flyers are the third best team to the first period over so far on the season, and they are second best in the NHL while at home to the first period over. The Capitals always trend to the first period under, but this year on the road, just a game above or a game below 500 rather to the first period over on the road. Alexander Ovechkin of the Flyers of the Capitals has always enjoyed playing against the Flyers. He has 44 goals in 68 career games, a total of 75 points. I expect him to find the back of the net at some point in time tonight. Also, a -5 overall for Alexander Ovechkin. Aggressive style also leads to opportunities for the other team. And the fact that these are two bad teams with the juice at -142 tells me the books see a little bit of liability here. I'll back it and follow the money. Give me a first period over between the Flyers and Capitals in Philadelphia tonight.
Love it.
So that'll do it for this Wednesday edition of Let's Bet It. Again, make sure you download the Pickswise app available in the Apple Store and Google Play. Subscribe to the Pickswise YouTube channel. And make sure you guys leave some comments and likes as well. For Jared Smith, I'm Mark Zinni. You guys have a wonderful Wednesday. Go cash some tickets. Tomorrow, Let's Bet It back once again. Have a great day. Go get it. Go bet it. We'll see you tomorrow.